Hey folks, Dave here at Thunder Mesa Studio, and we're about 1 week away from my self-imposed deadline to finish the Gruesome Gulch layout. That's right, October the 29th, Saturday, we're going to have an open studio here where the layout is to be revealed, and that's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days away, and what that means is I am pretty much out of time. Now, in retrospect, giving myself just 4 months to complete a project like this all by myself was a little overly ambitious, I'll admit, especially since I have other responsibilities and things to do. However, the show must go on, and rather than spending the next week just finishing maybe one more structure, I'm going to use that time to get as much done on the front of the layout as I can to make it presentable to the public. And that means finishing up some ground cover and weeds, doing some structure mock-ups for the rest of the buildings here in Gruesome Gulch Town, and adding some figures and details and even some sound effects going forward. So got a lot to do. Let's get started on all that. Now, one thing that'll really help this look more finished right away is to add a fascia to finish off this exterior edge and cover up all this foam down here. So I'm taking some measurements. I'm going to cut some 1/8 inch thick masonite, and then we'll put all of that into place. Now, on a fascia like this, you don't just want to have it, square edges. You want it to follow the contours of the layout. At least I do. And so the process I've come up with, and I've used this on the Thunder Mesa layout too, is basically to cut a piece that's a little bit oversized along the top edge where it meets the layout. And then I clamp it into place, and I can come back and trace on the back side where it meets the scenery. And then we go back and we cut it again to match that contour. And of course, that's especially important in places like this where there's a canyon or an area of scenery below the track level. Now I've got a line I can work with, and I can take and cut these pieces out with a scroll saw. All right. Well, now that I've got a good fit on this, I can just use some liquid nails for projects to cement it into place. Use some spring clamps to hold it while the glue sets up. If you need help clamping it in some places, you can drill directly into the foam, just temporarily, and put a drywall screw in there, and that'll hold it until the glue sets up. Just got to be careful. Now, before we paint this, I'll back those screws back out and fill the holes. Now, while I'm waiting for that glue to dry, I can come in here with some Sculptamold and use it to fill in the gaps between the fascia and the scenery and basically blend the two together. So it'll be fairly seamless. The goal, at least for me when doing a fascia like this, is for it to look like it's a big hunk of earth that's just been cut out and lifted up. So there shouldn't be an obvious gap or anything between the scenery and the fascia board. All right. Really nothing left to do now except for wait for everything to dry overnight. Okay, it's a new day. Everything seems to have dried nicely overnight. Now I can start removing these clamps, backing these screws out, then I'll fill all the holes, we'll do a little sanding, and then we can start to do some finish work up here on the layout. I just fill these holes with a little spackle. Now, just take my gray scenic base color and paint all of this Sculptamold to match the rest of the layout. Should all blend right together. Now, if you recall, several videos back, we painted all the track a flat black color. But now I want to go back over it with some lighter grays that I'm just going to dry brush on to bring out some of the details in the ties and make the ties stand out a little bit more when everything is ballasted. So I've got a couple of lighter grays here. I'm just going to dry brush this on. Makes the track look a little bit more old and weathered, and it brings out the molded in detail on these plastic micro-engineering ties. You'll basically want to do this for everywhere that the track is visible. Okay, for this next step, I've removed the structures up here. And just like we did for Boot Hill, I've mixed up some pewter colored sanded grout. And we're going to put in the rest of the road here and some of the ground cover here and there where the structures are not. So I've marked that, by the way, on the surface of the foam, so I can tell. You probably can't see the lines, but I can. So I don't want to get a lot of grout underneath where the structures are going to go. Just kind of ladling this on here. I should probably start at the top of the hill. That would be the smart thing to do. Work my way down. Once again, you don't want to put this stuff on too thick. Let me get my brush. I can spread it out a little bit. I'm just kind of stabbing at it. Help spread it out. Make sure I get a nice even coat up here, because there's going to be a little seam up here, kind of front and center. Over here by the depot platform, I want to work the grout in with a little bit smaller brush, but I still want to use kind of a stipple pattern to give the look of soil when this dries. By the way, I'm not worried about gluing down the depot platform, because if you remember when I built the station, the entire structure lifts off the platform. So I really don't care if the platform itself is glued down to the layout. Now, while that grout is still wet, I can already start to come in and add the ground cover. And these are some cinders that I collected up near Flagstaff, Arizona. I got them in several different shades, and this one is just the right shade to match the paint, or it will be by the time all is said and done. I've got a darker shade for doing the ballast on the track, and I've sifted that down, and I'll be applying that after this step. I like to take a soft brush and just kind of push this around, get it back up underneath the cliff face here. I'm going to come back with some larger stones that maybe have fallen down from up above. That gives a really realistic look. I'm going to have a variety of sizes. And the nice thing is that gravity will help you out. It'll automatically send the bigger ones down to the lower places, and the smaller ones will stick up in the higher spots. Before I start gluing all of this down, I think I'm just going to go ahead and do the ballast too. Then I can all glue it down at once. I'll have to come back and do things twice. And as I mentioned, the ballast is a slightly darker shade of cinders that I've sifted down, be a little finer. As you can see, I just sprinkle them on with a paper cup, and then go back with a soft brush, kind of go right down the middle. This takes a lot of manicuring, because before you glue this down, you want to make sure there's no chunks of ballast up in the webbing of the rail or anything like that. Nothing that's going to cause derailments or problems down the line. So I'm just going to go down, make sure just the tops of the ties are showing through. I always do this to myself. I always put an obstacle in my way just to make my life more difficult. It makes for a more dramatic scene, but trying to get tools back under here is always a challenge. Okay. I think I've got that about as groomed as it needs to be. Fortunately, I don't have any turnouts to deal with on this layout. Now I can start gluing everything into place. Now, this is just white glue that's diluted down 3 to 1 with water. And I just like to dribble it on. Some people prefer a spray bottle for this. I find I get a lot more control just kind of squirting it out of the bottle. Also, I should note that this ground cover and ballast is heavy enough because it's crushed cinders that I don't really need to use any wet water to hold it into place. A lot of times when you ballast track or do ground cover, you want to do a spray of wet water over the top, which is usually just water with a couple of drops of liquid detergent in it, and that breaks the surface tension and helps to hold everything down. But I found that that's a step I can often skip when I'm using heavier materials like this. Stuff just doesn't move. Now you can see why we wait till after all this is done to paint the fascia. It's going to be a mess right up until the end. Now, a good question to ask is how much glue is enough? You know, I'm using diluted white glue. When you see it puddling white like that, that's when you know you have the right amount of glue. Everything's wet, it's soaking into everything. One thing I neglected to mention, you really want to make sure that the power is disconnected from the track before you start doing this. Otherwise, you'll short it out. Well, I think that is going to do it. There's really nothing else left to do now except, once again, let everything dry overnight and see how it looks in the morning. But there is one more thing I want to get done before I call it quits for today. So this little unit is a mini MP3 player, which I picked up on Amazon.com. And It's rechargeable. Just plug it into a USB port and it will recharge. And this is a thumb drive which has some theme music and background effects on it. What I decided on was I wanted something kind of subtle but spooky, and one of the best pieces I found was actually the load area music for the Haunted Mansion. You know, when you're in limbo and about to get on your Omnimover, your Doom buggy, this is the same music that plays. So this plugs into here, like so. It's all charged up. There we go. And this is going to mount inside here. Here, let's make sure you can hear that. And on it goes, repeating over and over again like that. I don't want to play too much of it because I might get a copyright hit for it, but that gives you the idea of the sound effects that will be playing in the background for Gruesome Gulch. Well, good Wednesday morning. Yes, it's Wednesday, and that means I've got 3 days left until the grand unveiling of the Gruesome Gulch layout. Got a lot done in the last couple days, but there's still an awful lot left to do. Primarily the structure mock-ups. That's a big one. I really need to get started on that. But before I jump into that today, I think I want to finish the fascia. Get that painted. Let's do that. Now before I start painting, I just want to use a little sandpaper and get rid of any Sculpt-A-Mold or glue that's hanging over the edge there. Give myself a nice flat clean surface to work with to paint. So for paint, I want a flat black, and I could go and have some mixed up, but I've got some cheap black acrylic from the craft store, and that will work just fine. This tube acrylic is nice and thick, so it covers really well. And I'm just going to go in with a 1-inch brush and work my way all the way around. Dip it in a little water. I like this brush because I can come right up to the edge here. Gives me a nice little bit of control. I usually prefer artist brushes rather than hardware store brushes for this kind of thing. And that's what I'm using here. And you can see how well that covers. Actually much better than most latex paints will. I'd like to be able to do this in more or less one coat. Okay, time now to do some structure mock-ups. And I'm going to do these the same way I do the more finished looking mock-ups on the Thunder Mesa layout. I create some graphics using Adobe Photoshop from the plans that I've already created for the structures that are yet to be built. And then we print these out on some nice photo paper, some matte photo paper, and use that as the basis for our mock-up. I think I'll go ahead and start in the saloon first, and the first step is going to be to laminate this to something a little bit heavier than this printer paper. The first thing I need to do is to spray the back of this with some Super 77 multi-purpose adhesive. I could just tape it down like so, back side up, get a nice even coat of glue on here. Be right back. Now this is some Bristol board. This is about 80-pound Bristol board, and that'll make it this nice thickness, I think, to work with. Thick enough to represent the front wall, but thin enough to be easy to cut. I like to use a brayer. Make sure we get good adhesion, get any air bubbles out. Now, just need to cut this out using a sharp number 11 blade in my hobby knife. Now for the side and back walls on these, I'm just using some inexpensive chipboard, cheapo cardboard. This is like the stuff cereal boxes are made out of. It's about 1/32 of an inch thick. I also painted the back side of the front. Kind of a neutral gray because that part's going to show. And now I'm getting ready to put this together. I'm going to brace the corners with some scale 6x6. Doesn't really matter though, it's just, you know, scrap lumber, just for some extra strength in the corners. This is a pretty shallow building. All the buildings in Gruesome Gulch are pretty shallow. They're not flats, but they're kind of shallow relief. They're caricatured in that way. They're kind of small and tall and shallow, you know, for a couple of reasons. One, it gives them a certain character, and also it's really all there's room for. I should be able to put this whole thing together now. I tell you, if you ever, if you're getting ready for a show or anything and need to get some structures done in a hurry, just placeholders. This is it's a good technique to know. Be able to put some mock-ups together real quick. And even if you can't, design something like this in Photoshop, you might be able to find photos in magazines or something online that you can use and, scale to your size, print it out. Now I'm making a base for the mock-up out of some foam core. This will lift it up a little bit higher to where I want it on the layout. And I'm also using a Minwax stain marker to add the look of a board sidewalk out front. And this will fit right there like that. I want to paint the sides and the back a color that will more or less match the front. What is this? Apple Barrel Chocolate Bar, which is not at all the color of chocolate, but actually a nice red brown. Now I think I can glue this down to the base without any further ado. Now I've cut a piece of chipboard for the roof, and I'm just giving it a kind of a weathered gray paint job by using two different shades of gray and letting them kind of mix together right on the roof like this. Now we can glue this on. I clamp that with my fingers for a minute or two. Now I'm making a porch awning. That same painted chipboard. We can go ahead and put that on. For the porch posts, I'm going to use a couple of 4x4s. We'll go ahead and paint those before I put them in. Now I can glue these in. They just fit up under the awning like so. Put the sign on. Not going to get too fancy, just got a piece of 2x4 holding it on here. Well, now I'm going to do something I don't usually do with my mock-ups. I'm going to weather the heck out of this so it better matches the other Gruesome Gulch structures and the aesthetics of the whole layout over there. So I'm going to put a bunch of chalks on here, mostly grays, tans, just to give it that ghost town look. Okay, try that right there. That's one down, 3 or 4 more to go. Well, as it turned out, finishing those mock-ups took a little bit longer than I thought it would. It took all the rest of the day Wednesday and all day Thursday to finish these guys, and it's now Friday, the last full day I have to work on this before the opening on Saturday. So, got a few things to get done, but first, let me show you the mock-ups that I finished. Well, in addition to the Deadeye Saloon, I've also got the Eternal Rest Hotel. Our rooms are to die for, that's their slogan. And next door to that, we've got Lou Cypher's Mercantile. Lou Cypher, get it? Lucifer. Buy, sell, and trade, all souls welcome. Then I did a couple of little sheds. I have one over here and another one over next to the Undertaker shop. And, did some work on the board sidewalks and stuff like that. But now, the next step is to finish putting in the greens, as they say in the movie business, and that's all the things that are supposed to represent plant life, or dead plant life in the case of Gruesome Gulch. I've already started in, as you can see, with some of this sage, like I used for the big tree over on Boot Hill, putting some of that here and there for larger dead bushes and trees, and then I've got to come in and add a bunch of weeds, mostly made from old paintbrushes, and then we'll see where we are as far as the final details are concerned, which I've already started priming some of those, and those are waiting to get painted. So let's finish up all the greens and then move on to the final details. Now it's time for some of the little details that'll really bring this to life, so to speak. First off, we've got some little bitty low-scale jack-o'-lanterns, and these are from mini prints. These should really help to set the Halloween mood. All right. Well, Gruesome Gulch locomotive needs an engineer, so I've got a skeleton in there. He's from miniprints.com. Just painted him up and put him behind the controls. We'll call him Boney Maroney. I already did this gag with the casket on the depot platform over in Calico, but I think it works pretty well here too. These are from mini prints also. Adding another casket up here by the undertakers that this one is occupied with one of those mini prince skeletons. We'll round this out with a couple more caskets, I think. Last but far from least, we've got this guy, the Headless Horseman himself. Also from mini prints. Just got a coat of paint on him. Not bad. And now, my friends, I am really and truly out of time, both for this project and for this video. It's about 6 o'clock on Friday evening, and I need to go home and edit what I have together so I can get this uploaded onto YouTube and show you all what I've been working on. I want to thank you all so much for coming along with me on the Gruesome Gulch journey for the last 4 months, and I wish I had another 4 months to work on it. Well, maybe by next Halloween it'll actually be done. I've learned a valuable lesson, though, about not biting off more than I can chew and giving myself some more reasonable deadlines. Until next time, keep moving forward, my friends. That's what I'm going to do. Adios for now, and if I don't see you, happy Halloween.